If you don't take action, your life will not change. That's not a possibility, it's a fact. It doesn't matter how much you think, how deeply you hope, or how detailed your plans are. If you don't transform them into concrete action, then you're simply repeating yesterday. Every morning you wake up, you live a replica of the day before. And the most dangerous part is you've gotten used to it. Used to the feeling of procrastination. Used to waiting until you're ready. But you already know what's really happening. You never actually feel ready. You're waiting for the perfect moment to begin. When things calm down, when you're less tired, when life feels less chaotic. But that moment doesn't exist. It's a mirage you've created to justify your delay. You tell yourself, I'm not ready yet, or I just need a little more time. But the truth is, you're paralyzing yourself with excuses that sound reasonable. And while you hesitate, the things you want, better health, a better job, more freedom, remain out of reach. Not because they're too far, but because you're not moving toward them. I'm not saying you have to do everything at once. I'm not saying you need a perfect plan. I'm saying you need to start. One step, one action, one simple decision that can shift your entire trajectory. But the first thing you need to conquer isn't the outside world, it's the procrastination inside you. It's that small voice saying you can do it tomorrow. If you don't control this moment will control you. It will lead you into the same loop, thinking, wishing, delaying, disappointment, then repeat. Action is the line between the dreamers and the doers. Everyone dreams, but only those who dare to act create something real. Ideas don't build careers. Hope doesn't produce results. What shapes your life are the daily habits of action, not temporary emotion. And the strange thing is you already know that. You know waiting doesn't help. You know that every time you choose not to act, you're silently choosing to live your old life. So why do you keep waiting? Because action involves risk. Action means facing the possibility of failure, but by not acting, you fail at the very start. People often imagine success comes from one big leap, but in reality, it begins with small, consistent actions, often the kind no one claps for, no one notices, no praise at all. Just you facing yourself in silence, and you choose to do or not to do. Then you choose again tomorrow, no excitement needed, no inspiration required. Just don't betray your own decision. Every day you delay is a day you steal from the future you want to build. And the future won't wait for you. It's being decided by what you do today, not tomorrow, not next week, today. You don't need to see the whole path. You just need to take one step. When you act, you break the paralysis, you generate momentum, and from that momentum, everything else begins to shift. Action is the only language this world understands. No one cares what you think, how you feel, or what you hope for. But if you do something, you change your circumstances. You send a signal to yourself that says, I am the initiator. I am in control. I don't wait for opportunities. I create them. And from that moment on, you begin living a different life, not a copy of yesterday, but a brand new chapter. You write line by line. Change doesn't start on the day you feel motivated enough. It starts on the day you stop making excuses. The day you look at your procrastination and say, enough. The day you stop waiting for the right feeling and begin doing the right thing. That is the day you rise above yourself. And if you're brave enough to begin, just begin. You're already ahead of 99% of people still waiting for the perfect moment to arrive. Trust me, you're not lacking talent. You're not lacking knowledge. You're only lacking the decisive commitment to start. And if you don't act today, don't be surprised when a year from now, you're still in the same place, only with more regret. So don't ask, when is the right time? The real question is, am I committed enough to start today? If the answer is yes, then you need nothing else. Take action. The rest, I promise you, will begin to change with you. Nothing is harder than starting. Not because you're not smart enough, not because you lack time or knowledge, but because right before the moment of action, your mind activates its full defense system: fear, doubt, the feeling of not being ready, and a series of seemingly reasonable excuses to delay. You're not lazy, you're just being controlled by an ancient protective mechanism. Avoid risk, dodge change. Your mind doesn't care about your dreams, it only cares about safety. And anything new, anything uncertain gets labeled as dangerous. That's why you hesitate. That's why you keep thinking, I'll start tomorrow. But you know the truth, tomorrow never comes if you don't dare to begin today. You think you need more time, more information, more perfection. But in reality, you don't need anything more. You just need the first action, because the first action, no matter how small, is the breaking point. It breaks the cycle of hesitation, cuts through the repetition of fear. The longer you wait, the harder it becomes to start. Every time you say, I'll do it tomorrow, you're training yourself to procrastinate. And that habit becomes your personality, not because you're weak, but because you're stuck in your own overanalysis and unrealistic expectations of a perfect start. The real stories of successful people don't begin with inspiration. They begin with the decision to move forward even when they weren't ready. No one ever starts with absolute certainty. They act in the fog, in fear, in doubt. But that didn't stop them. And because they started, they could then see the next step. You don't need to see the whole map to begin the journey. You just need to see one step ahead. And when you dare to take that step, the world begins to respond. Information starts to appear. Signals become clearer. Momentum begins to build, not before you act, but after. You're waiting for inspiration to act. You're heading in the wrong direction. It's action that creates inspiration, not the other way around. You don't need to feel fired up to start doing the right thing. You just need one decision. Act, even without enthusiasm. And when you act, your brain records the first victory, a small piece of evidence that you can control yourself. From there, you build momentum. Momentum builds confidence. Confidence fuels motivation. And that cycle starts spinning, all from one tiny initial movement. But if you don't act, everything stays the same. Ideas remain ideas. Plans stay on paper. And you remain stuck in the loop of self-doubt. Be honest with yourself. How many times have you made a plan, told others you were going to do something, and did nothing? Not because you lacked ability, but because you couldn't get past the starting threshold. The first step is always the hardest, but because it's hard, it has power. Once you cross that threshold, you're no longer the same person. You've proven to yourself that you are stronger than fear, stronger than delay, and next time the barrier will be lower. You're reprogramming your mental operating system from reactive thinking to proactive action. The earlier you start, the sooner you build a new system where action leads emotion instead of waiting for emotion to lead action. That's the principle of those who master their lives. They don't wait to feel right. They just need to know it's right, and they do it. No drama, no need for validation, just action. And that action opens up things that those who keep waiting will never reach. You can plan for another week, you can think about it for another month, but nothing happens until you start. One email sent, one phone call made, one trip to the gym, 1 hour of learning. Every first action carries something no book can give, the shift in state from intention to reality. And you'll feel it in your body, lighter, more engaged, more energized. That's not emotion, that's proof. And from that moment forward, you're no longer the person waiting for a miracle. You're the one creating it. So stop sitting there, stop waiting for the perfect moment, stop hoping fear will magically disappear. It won't, but you can move, you can get up, you can step forward. And that one step, just that, is enough to make the world start shifting with you. Remember this, starting is the hardest part, but it's also the only part you need to do to change everything. If you've taken one step, there's no reason you can't take the second. That's the simplest logic and the foundation of every great achievement. What's stopping you isn't the distance to the goal. It's the overwhelming feeling when you try to look at the whole journey all at once. You're not tired because you've taken a step. You're tired because you've been staring at the mountaintop for too long. And then you think, how could I possibly go that far? But you forget one thing, you just took the first step. And if one step already happened, the next one is absolutely possible. People don't fail halfway through the journey, they fail right at the start because they think too far ahead, they count how many days, how many weeks, how many months it'll take to reach the end, and they give up before they even really begin. But you don't need the whole journey. You just need to keep going, one more step, then another, and another. No one climbs Everest in a single night. They just know one thing, today, I go a few hundred more meters, and tomorrow a little further. That's how the impossible becomes reality. You may not see results after your first step, but what matters isn't the result. It's the fact that you shifted from standing still to moving forward. And once an object is in motion, all you need to do is maintain the momentum. Momentum doesn't come from emotion. It comes from continuing, even when nothing feels special, even when no one notices, even when the outside looks exactly the same. Because on the inside, you're changing. Your mind is registering, I am a person of action. I am someone who doesn't stop. Think back to something difficult you once overcame. Maybe it was learning a new skill, improve your health, or changing your environment. At first, it was too much. You almost wanted to quit, but then you did one small thing, one lesson, one workout, one email sent. And from there, you did it again and again. Suddenly, everything felt lighter than it did at the beginning because you had left the getting ready to begin state and entered the already in progress state. And once you're there, even small progress builds belief. Belief doesn't come from theory. Belief comes from real experience. I just did it. Most people fail because they expect massive results too quickly. They start with sky-high expectations to transform their entire life in a few weeks. And when results don't show up instantly, they misjudge the effort. They assume they're on the wrong path, that what they're doing doesn't work. But the truth is, they haven't gone far enough to make any valid judgment. You can't bake a loaf of bread for 5 minutes and complain that it's not done. You have to give it time. Patience is something the person who takes the second step has, but the one who only takes the first step doesn't. Think of success like climbing a staircase. If you stand at the bottom and look straight up to the next floor, you'll feel exhausted before you've moved. But if you just focus on the next step and place your foot on it, everything becomes simpler. One step, then another. By the time you look up again, you've already reached near the top without realizing it. The issue was never whether you had the strength to climb the whole staircase. It was whether you had the will to stop looking too far ahead and focus on the next step instead. One day of healthy eating, one moment of learning something new, one phone call you dare to make. These are just second steps. And after the second step comes the third. So success doesn't come from one giant leap. It comes from repeating the small steps others overlook. You don't need to create miracles every day. You just need to not stop. Every step you take is a vote. I choose to move forward. And the more you vote like that, the more you shape your identity. Action taker, consistent, relentless. There will be moments you feel slow, like nothing's happening. That's when most people quit. But if you remember, it's just one more step, you'll outlast them, because the gap between failure and progress is often just one more attempt someone else refused to make. Not because they couldn't, but because they didn't understand this. If you've taken one step, the next is simply continuing. It doesn't need to be dramatic. It doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to not stop. If today you manage to wake up early once, then tomorrow you can do it again. If you wrote one paragraph, you can write the next. If you made one small change, you can stack another on top of it. Every small step you commit to not only brings you closer to your goal, it also builds a new version of yourself, more resilient, more intentional, more unstoppable each day. The real question was never, can you do it? It was, do you have the courage to continue? And if you've already taken the first step, then you already have everything you need to take the next. Successful people aren't necessarily the best. They're not always the smartest, not always starting from the best place, and not always born with natural talent. The one thing they do better than everyone else is that they don't quit. They keep going when others stop. They move forward when things get blurry, when results haven't shown up, when motivation runs dry, and that quiet, unglamorous persistence becomes the most solid foundation for success. You see someone achieve what you've always dreamed of, and you think, they must have something special, maybe. But the most special thing they have is that they didn't walk away from the game. When things got hard, they didn't say, I quit. They said, I'll try again and again and again. Not because they never felt tired or discouraged, but because they placed their goals above their emotions. They understood that everything has a price, and the price of success is persistence, the kind most people aren't brave enough to maintain. Most people start strong, they're excited, full of energy, they imagine a bright future just a few weeks of effort away. But then reality kicks in. Results don't come as fast as they hoped. The struggle is harder than they thought, and disappointment begins to build. And when negative emotions exceed their tolerance, they quit. They say, maybe this isn't for me. But they forget one thing. Success isn't a feeling. It's the outcome of repetition. Everyone has the right to stop, but the winner is the one who chooses not to, even when every reason seems valid to walk away. No one is born with everything they want. Everyone has to go through the phase of uncertainty, of not seeing the path, of being unrecognized. The difference is ordinary people see that as a signal to stop. Successful people see it as a test to continue. They don't judge the journey by how they feel in the moment. They say, I see no results. I must be on the wrong path. They say, I haven't seen results yet because I haven't gone far enough. You may have fewer resources than others. You may not be as skilled as them at the starting line. But if you make the decision not to quit, you'll surpass people with more talent but less grit. Talent without endurance is like fireworks, bright for a moment, then gone. But an average person who keeps going will accumulate enough of skill, experience, and self-belief to outperform even those once called geniuses. Success doesn't belong to the privileged. It belongs to the ones who stay in the game longer. Every time you fail is an opportunity to learn. Every time you stumble is valuable data. And the person who doesn't quit is the one who uses those stumbles to recalibrate. While others use failure as a reason to turn back, you use it as a map to move forward. You don't need to avoid failure. You need to leverage it to see where you're lacking, to understand what's not working, to become better, not perfect, better than yesterday. Take a close look at the most successful people you know. Their path wasn't paved in roses. They failed. They got rejected. They were misunderstood. They were laughed at. But they didn't walk away. They came back. They stood up. They started over if they had to. And that's what made the difference. Not superior ability, but resilience, the ability to endure uncertainty, long periods with no results, days when no one believed in them, not even themselves. You don't need anyone to believe in you right now. You just need not to let go of your own commitment. A person who doesn't quit, no matter how slow they go, will reach their destination because everyone else has already turned off, already stopped, already said, that's enough. But you continue. And that's what sets you apart. Don't think you need to be perfect to keep going. You just need not to turn disappointment into a reason to retreat. Feeling discouraged is normal. Wanting to rest is understandable. But quitting solves nothing. It only guarantees one thing. You'll never know whether you could have made it or not. So if you're tired, rest, but don't stop. If you're doubtful, step back to observe, but don't let go. If you've already come this far, you have a reason not to turn around. And if you haven't seen results yet, maybe you're just a few steps away. Don't let temporary emotions kill a dream you've been building your whole life. Because in the end, what defines you isn't how talented you are. It's whether you dare to continue when everything tells you to give up. Are you waiting for a major turning point to change your life? Waiting for that explosive moment where everything transforms after one intense push? Sorry, that moment doesn't exist. What truly creates greatness isn't a bright flash. It's the small victories, repeated consistently every single day. No one becomes iconic from one insane day of effort. They become iconic because they understand that success doesn't come from doing a lot once. It comes from doing a little without stopping consistently, even when no one's watching. You underestimate a short workout. You dismiss one healthy meal. You think reading one chapter won't make a difference. But the small things you do or don't do will compound, accumulate, and shape the person you become. Every action, no matter how small, is a vote you cast for your own future. Want better health? That vote doesn't come from a month-long detox. It comes from every meal you choose. You want to get smarter? It's not the result of a crash course, but of 15 minutes you study each day, even when tired. Everything big you desire is built on the small things you're overlooking. You don't need to change your whole life in a week. You just need to win today and repeat that again tomorrow. A small win is the decision you make when no one's forcing you, no one's watching, and there's no instant reward. It's when you wake up early even though you want to sleep in, when you eat right even though it's easier to eat wrong, when you finish the task even though your mood says no, not because you enjoy it, but because you know it's right. These wins don't impress outsiders, but they silently build your identity. Most people don't fail because they're not good enough. They fail because they underestimate the small things. They start with big motivation, aiming to change everything quickly. But when results don't come right away, they lose interest. They give up. They say, maybe this doesn't work. But the problem isn't the method. The problem is they lack the patience to understand that true strength lies in accumulation. And accumulation takes time, something most people aren't willing to give. I'm not saying you have to live like a monk or become a machine. I'm saying you need to understand the difference between temporary effort and systematic commitment. A few intense days can't replace months of steady persistence. One 12-hour workday can't replace 3 months of focused work 2 hours a day. It's consistency, not intensity, that separates the ordinary from the extraordinary. If you feel like you're progressing too slowly, remember this. Even if you can't see the change on the outside, your inner wiring is still being reprogrammed. Every time you win against yourself, you reinforce a habit. Every time you do the right thing instead of the easy thing, you embed a signal in your nervous system. I keep my promises to myself. And when that becomes automatic, you no longer need motivation. You do it because you're the kind of person who does it not because of how you feel, but because it's who you now are. Small wins don't need to be dramatic. They just need to be consistent. A 20-minute workout, a no-sugar meal, an hour without social media, a completed to-do list. You think those things don't make a difference? Then look closely at any successful person and you'll see their life is the product of small wins stacked up over years. They didn't just wake up with iron discipline or deep wisdom. They simply didn't skip day, and that's what made them irreplaceable. You want a stable future? Start laying down small bricks today. Don't wait for inspiration. Don't wait for the perfect timing. Just ask, what can I win today? One right choice, one positive action, one focused hour of work. Just one thing, but do it every day. No skipping, no excuses, no negotiations. And if you have the discipline to repeat that, you'll join the rare group of people who are no longer controlled by fate because they've rewritten their own lives, one quiet win at a time. And you can do that too. No explosion needed, no greatness overnight, just consistency. Because all true greatness is built from small, repeated acts, unseen, uncelebrated, unnoticed, except by you. And one day you won't need anyone's validation because the results will speak for themselves. Your most dangerous enemy isn't out there. It's inside your own head. Your mind is the first to try to convince you to stop. It doesn't shout. It whispers. Very reasonably, very gently. You're tired today. It's okay to take a day off. I'm not sure I can do this. Wait until you have more time. These words may sound harmless, even like self-care, but they're the reason you still haven't reached anything you truly want. Not because you lack ability, but because you too easily believe the voice that makes you delay. Your mind doesn't care about your dreams. It cares about safety. It's designed to avoid risk, avoid failure, avoid change. Every time you try to do something outside your routine, learn a new skill, start a project, change yourself, your mind reacts as if you're stepping into danger. And to protect you, it throws out 100 reasons to pull you back into your comfort zone. That's how the brain works, not because you're weak, but because you haven't realized you're being controlled. The problem is you mistake those thoughts for truth. You think, if I feel anxious, something must be wrong. No. Anxiety is just a signal that you're stepping into the unfamiliar, not proof that you're doing something wrong. You can't eliminate that negative voice in your head, but you can choose not to follow it. Your mind may produce warnings, but the power to act is still yours. Successful people aren't free of doubt. They have it, plenty of it. They're also afraid of failure. They feel pressure too. But they don't let those feelings make decisions for them. They listen. And then they act against it. When the mind says stop, they continue. When the mind says you can't, they try. When the mind brings up past failures, they bring back the reason they started. That's the difference You must understand, if you always act according to emotion, you'll remain stuck. Emotions shift like the weather, the setting, even what you ate. If you're tired today, your mind will instantly give you a reason to quit. If you get rejected today, it will tell you you're not good enough. And if you follow that, you're handing over control of your life to a system that reacts instead of one that leads with vision. Do you want to change your life? Start by refusing to obey everything your mind says. Not by denying your emotions, but by not letting them make decisions. Choose based on principles, based on goals, based on truth. When your mind says wait, ask wait for what? When it says you're not ready, ask what evidence proves that's true. When it brings up old fears, respond, I've survived those before and came back stronger. You don't need to silence your inner voice. You need to lead it. Success doesn't require you to always feel confident. It only requires you to work even while in doubt. You can shake, you can question everything, but you still act. And that is the behavior of a mature mind, one no longer manipulated by mental noise. Every time you act against a negative emotion, you're rewiring your brain. You're training yourself to act with reason. And when that becomes instinct, those thoughts that used to weaken you no longer have a grip. How many times has your mind held you back? The projects you didn't start, the opportunities you didn't take, the relationships you didn't pursue, not because you didn't want them, but because you let a passing thought decide your future. But imagine, what if every one of those times you had done the opposite? How different would things be? Ask yourself, if my mind couldn't stop me, what would I do right now? Write it down. Then do it, regardless of how you feel. You don't need your mind's permission to begin. You need the commitment to rise above it. And once you've experienced what it's like to win against that voice in your head, you'll never want to go back. You'll realize, I'm stronger than I ever thought. That's how you begin to master yourself, not by waiting until the fear is gone, but by acting even when it's still there. And next time, when your mind whispers, don't do it, smile. Because you know that voice isn't you. It's just the old system. And you're rewriting the code of your life, one action at a time. Successful people aren't the ones who show up only when others are watching, when the spotlight is on, or when applause is waiting. They're the ones who quietly show up every day, even when no one sees, no one cares, and no one claps. It's in the quietest moments that they build the strongest foundation, not through words, but through repeated action that no one notices. They don't need recognition to continue. They continue because they've already decided not to betray themselves. You see someone achieve something you've dreamed of and think they got lucky, or maybe they have some special talent, but what you don't see are the early mornings when they force themselves up while the world still sleeps. You don't see the late nights when they keep working after their motivation has run out, while friends are relaxing, while most people have already stopped. They don't show up only when things are going well. They show up even when life is chaotic, when they feel uncertain, when results haven't come. That's character. That's discipline. And that's what makes them irreplaceable. Persistence doesn't have to be loud. In fact, it's often very quiet. You won't see results after just 1 week of effort. No one gives you a medal for doing the right thing for a month. But the quieter your consistency, the stronger your foundation becomes. And once that foundation is deep enough, it can support any weight of success that comes later. On the other hand, those who only act when they're seen, when they're praised, will always need attention to keep going. They're not persistent. They're just performing. You have to ask yourself, are you doing this for results or for recognition? If you're truly after results, you'll keep going even when no one acknowledges you, because you know every day you put in the work is another step closer to your best self. You don't have to talk too much. In the end, your results will speak for you with a voice no one can deny. There will be days when it feels like no one notices your effort, no one checks in, no one praises you, no recognition. And if you're working just to be seen, you'll quit easily. But if you're working because you chose this path, then the silence won't shake you. In fact, that's when your strength is forged. Because when you're no longer dependent on outside attention, you start turning inward, and from there you develop a kind of endurance others simply don't have. Endurance isn't built in grand moments. It's forged in cold mornings when you still show up to train, in quiet evenings when you still sit down to study, in long work sessions no one will ever see, but you still complete with your highest standards. Those actions, when repeated enough, rewire your thinking. You no longer need to feel right to take action. You act because it's the right thing to do. Persistent people don't run faster. They don't jump farther. They just dare to repeat what's right more than anyone else. While others give up because they don't see progress, uh, uh, they understand that trees don't grow the day they're planted. They don't dig up the soil every day to check if the seed has sprouted. They trust the process. They work, they water, they persist, and let nature do the rest. And eventually people around them say they're so lucky, but only they know they weren't lucky. They just never disappeared. Um, you don't need a cheering crowd. You just need to keep your promise to yourself. When you can show up every day without needing anyone to notice, you're forging a kind of internal power no one can take away. Uh, that's why once persistent people succeed, they're nearly impossible to defeat because they weren't built on hype. They were built in silence by discipline, by unwavering commitment to themselves. Ask yourself, are you willing to keep going even when no one acknowledges you, no one sees you, no one praises you? If the answer is yes, then you've already overcome one of the biggest obstacles most people never get past. You've entered the rare group of people who don't act for the spotlight, but for the vision. And that's the only group with enough resilience to finish the race when everyone else has already turned back. Greatness doesn't come from showing up in front of a crowd. It comes from showing up in silence, consistently, relentlessly, even when no one's watching, even when you've lost excitement, even when results haven't arrived. Because you know there's only one way to become unbeatable, keep showing up, even when no one sees. Every time you make an excuse, even if only in your mind, you're pushing yourself further away from what you want. The danger of excuses doesn't lie in the words. They lie in the moment you start believing them. At first, it's I'm busy, then I'm tired, then maybe this just isn't for me. It sounds harmless, but repeat them enough times and they become a belief system. And the terrifying part is that system, it doesn't make you stronger, it keeps you stuck. No one starts out with an excuse-driven mindset, but over time, out of fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of responsibility, you start inventing reasons. And the better you get at rationalizing, the harder it becomes to see that you are your own biggest obstacle. You trap yourself in a circle of logic you created, and that circle, though it feels safe, is the prison that stops you from ever becoming someone new. You say you need more time, but really you're procrastinating. You say you're not ready, but really you're scared to begin. You say you don't have enough resources, but really you haven't committed fully. Excuses sound reasonable, and that's what makes them dangerous, because they never shout quit. They whisper, just wait a little longer. But that little longer becomes forever if you don't stop it. Success isn't stolen by circumstances, it's delayed bit by tiny justifications. No one is stopping you from learning a new skill. No one is forbidding you from exercising. No one is forcing you to live today exactly like yesterday. There's only you and the reasons you allowed to live in your head. And if you're brave enough to be honest, you'll realize that almost every time you delayed, it wasn't because you couldn't. It was because you weren't ready to take responsibility. There are people with less talent than you, fewer opportunities than you, worse conditions than you, and yet they act because they don't make excuses. They don't need to feel perfect to begin. They don't wait for permission. They just do. They move forward awkwardly, slowly, uncertainly, and then they create results while you're still busy explaining why you can't yet. You may be smarter than them, but if they act and you don't, they'll surpass you, not because they're better, but because they excuse less. Every excuse you make is a day you lose. You think you're postponing a small task, but in truth, you're postponing an entirely different life, the life you could have had. The cruelest part of excuses is that you don't feel the consequences right away. There's no pain. Nothing obvious is lost, but because it's invisible, you let it repeat. And when you finally realize it, the years are gone, the opportunities vanished, and you're left with the question, what if I had just started earlier? I'm not saying you have to be perfect. I'm saying you need to be awake. Every time your mind tries to justify, interrupt it. Ask, is this reason real? Or am I just trying to dodge responsibility? Reframe the question, then choose to act. You don't have to win every mental battle. You just need to win this moment once. Then repeat. Remember, excuses don't reduce your pain, they only delay it. Skipping action today creates regret tomorrow. No one has ever achieved something great without rejecting easy reasons. and you're no exception. You want to change? Then start by refusing to make excuses, to delay, to negotiate with yourself every time it's time to do what's right. Each time you stop yourself from making an excuse, you're rebuilding trust with yourself. You're slowly becoming someone you can be proud of, not because you always win big, but because you no longer lie to yourself with clever explanations. You choose truth over comfort, action over avoidance, and that choice, repeated enough, will take you somewhere the excuse makers will never reach. So if today you're about to say, maybe tomorrow, change it to right now. If you're thinking, I'm not ready, change it to just start. And if any voice in your head gives you a reason not to act, smile, step past it, and do the opposite. Because every time you overcome an excuse, you take one step closer to becoming the person you could have been long ago. Dreams don't turn into reality by themselves. They hold no power if all you do is think about them, talk about them, or imagine them every night before sleep. No achievement is built from wishful thinking. Every result you see out there, people who've built careers, changed their lives, gained freedom, came from one simple thing that many refuse to face: action. Not positive thinking, not writing goals in a journal, not chanting affirmations every morning, but consistent, specific, non-negotiable action. You can sit there visualizing a beautiful future. You can dream of being healthy, wealthy, skilled, and free. But if you do nothing to move closer to it, you're simply using your dream as anesthesia, something to make you feel better about a reality you're not yet brave enough to change. A dream without action is just procrastination wrapped in glitter. You think you need inspiration to start? No, inspiration comes from movement, from doing the first task, then the second, and continuing. Every action is a brick, and even the loneliest bricks, when laid consistently, will form a road. But if you never lay the first one, don't be surprised when 5 years later you're still standing at the start, only now you're more tired, more doubtful, more disappointed. Meanwhile, those who used to be just like you have already moved far ahead, not because they dreamed better, but because they started while others were still thinking. You can take 100 self-development courses, read dozens of books, fill an entire notebook with notes, but if you don't translate it into action, all that knowledge is worthless. The world doesn't reward understanding, it changes for those who dare to do. And sadly, many people know exactly what needs to be done, but never do it. Not because they're not smart, but because they still believe dreams will lead the way. Dreams don't lead the way, action carves the path. You don't need to know everything beforehand, you just need to begin, do the first small thing, and from there the world responds. You learn, you adjust, you move forward. But if you stand still, hoping things will just happen, you'll only watch time slip by and opportunities vanish in silence. Opportunities don't die from failure, they die from being waited on for too long. Have you ever met someone who wasn't smarter than you, didn't start better than you, but still went farther? Of course you have. And the reason is always the same. They worked. They worked before they were clear, worked before they were ready, worked without support. They didn't spend time imagining the life they wanted. They spent time building it. And you? How many of your dreams have been left on paper? How many times did you prepare, plan, intend, only to let it all fade with the passing weeks you'll never get back? You need to start viewing your dreams as blueprints, not as the building itself. They can be beautiful, detailed, perfect on paper, but without a builder, they'll always remain imaginary. Builders don't wait for the perfect day to begin. They put on the gloves, lift the bricks, and get to work. No need for clarity. No need for perfect tools. They use what they have, do what they can, and learn what they're missing. And in the end, they have something dreamers never get: results. I'm not telling you to stop dreaming. I'm telling you to stop only dreaming. Dreams are essential, but they're not the finish line. They're the starting point. They're the fuel, not the engine. The engine is action. It's when you sit down and schedule your learning. It's when you say no to delay. It's when you begin something small, not perfect, not easy, not glamorous, but real. And from there, step by step, you turn what was imagined into something tangible, livable, provable. Be honest with yourself. Do you want success, or do you just want the feeling of dreaming about it? Those two are not the same. One forces you out of your comfort zone, demands sweat, accepts mistakes. The other doesn't. It's soft, beautiful, and completely useless. Which one do you choose? If you're ready, then start today. No more waiting. Drop the trap called positive thinking without action. Stop writing more goals and begin doing one of them. Even a small one, even a short one, but make it real. Because in the end, what builds your future is not your dreams. It's your hands willing to shape the present. Take action. Step by step. It's the only thing that makes a dream come alive. The future isn't created in some glorious moment of your life. It doesn't begin a year from now when you're more stable. It doesn't show up on the day you're completely ready, and it certainly isn't born from promises like, I'll start tomorrow. Your future, whether it's radiant or barren, start today. Every choice you make, every action you take or avoid, not tomorrow, not next week, but this day, this moment, this decision. Many people lose the life they deserve not because they're not smart enough or lack opportunity, but because they don't understand the real value of a single day. They treat a day as just a passing unit of time rather than a brick being laid into the foundation of their future. They postpone important things thinking it's just one day. What harm could it do? But that just one day, repeated enough times, is what drowns an entire life. Because the future doesn't collapse in one moment. It erodes slowly through neglect of today. If you can't take control of today, you won't be able to control any day in your future. Each morning you're handed a chance. Either use that day to move closer to your best self, or let it slip by and become another copy of yesterday. And the scary part is, you won't feel anything dramatic when you waste a day. No one will call you out, no one will punish you. But time doesn't wait, and at some point, you'll realize you owe yourself an entire life. You don't need to change your entire life right now. You just need to do today right. And repeat that tomorrow and the next day. You only need to win one day, but win it enough times and it builds your entire future. No one succeeds by doing everything in one night. They simply show up every day, despite fatigue, doubt, boredom, and do the right thing. They treat each day like a golden brick. And you, every time you procrastinate, every time you choose comfort over discipline, you're pulling a piece out of the future home you once dreamed of building. People tend to overestimate what they can achieve in a week, but vastly underestimate what they can build in a year with consistency. You don't need the perfect plan. You need one real action today. Write one page, do one workout, learn one skill, make one important call, do one hard but necessary thing. Those small actions repeated will create a transformation you can't even imagine right now. Don't wait for motivation. Don't wait until you feel like it. Emotions are traitors. Today you feel lazy, tomorrow you feel busy, the day after you feel bored, and then a week disappears without a trace. But action doesn't need emotion, it needs decision. It needs you to look the truth in the eye. If you do nothing today, you're silently choosing a future that looks exactly like your present, or worse. You may fool yourself into thinking you'll do better tomorrow, but if you're not doing it today, the odds you'll do it tomorrow are near zero, because you've already trained yourself to compromise. And compromise is a sweet poison. It gives you comfort now, but robs your dream later. Action, on the other hand, even tired, imperfect action, is the strongest declaration you can make to the universe. I'm serious about this life. If you've been waiting for a sign to begin, this is it. You don't need anything else. Today is the most important day of your life, because it's the one you're actually living. Not your birthday, not graduation day, this ordinary day, filled with choices waiting for you. And if you choose right, your tomorrow will be different. If you keep choosing right, next month will be different. And if you don't give up, next year, you won't even recognize yourself. In the end, the future doesn't come from promises, it comes from action. Not what you think you'll do, but what you are doing right now. Every action you take today is a brick in the foundation of the person you'll meet in the mirror 5 years from now. So ask yourself, who do you want to meet? Someone filled with regret for living in delay? Or someone who can look back with pride, knowing they didn't waste a single day? The future isn't given, it's built. And you already hold the first tool today. Don't lose it. Because when you take control of today, every other day begins to fall into place.